Rising, and
Grand
welcome
Rising.
to Grand Rising, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Curtain with Ade and Ram. Today we are with Cecelia Waterman Santiago. Grand Rising, Cecelia.
Grand Rising. Nice to be here. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to get to meet you and speak to you and to begin our journey of discovery on Behind the Curtain.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Ade. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I figure I read a little bit about Cecelia. Cecelia is the CEO of the Culture Shifting Foundation, a nonprofit company created to increase racial wealth equality in the United States. Before joining Culture Shifting Foundation, Ms. Waterman Santiago was the CEO of House of Rising Sun, a nonprofit dedicated to the wellness of girls that have been abused. Prior to establishing House of Rising Sun, she was Senior Vice President, Marketing and Client Services and Strategy Asset Managers, LLC. And before that, she was Senior Vice President and Key Accounts Manager at Lexington ING, a division of ING Group. Ms. Waterman Santiago has over 25 years of experience in the financial industry. Ms. Waterman Santiago has an MBA from Fordham University and a BS from St. Lawrence University. She also has a certified investment management analyst designation from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania.
That's about it.
Okay.
Cecelia.
That was a lot.
Amongst all the other things that you do that we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how did you get into this foundation?
Okay. So it's very interesting. When I left Wall Street, I decided I wanted to do something that was near and dear to my heart, something that gave back. For many years, I worked in finance and I enjoyed it, but I wanted to do something more creative. So I launched my business, Avalai Wellness, which I don't think I included in my bio, but that's a health and wellness business, as well as House of Rising Sun. And on this path of nonprofit, because House of Rising Sun is a nonprofit, I discovered that is really where my calling is, philanthropy, giving back, and working for the good of others. And when this opportunity came across my desk, I should say, when I found out about Culture Shifting Foundation, I thought it would be a nice blend of my finance background, because when you're in the nonprofit arena, you are constantly raising funds. You're constantly connecting with folks to bring in assets, because nonprofits, we actually survive by the support of our community, our friends, our family, our neighbors. And so I thought that it would be a nice mix for me, mixing my philanthropy, mixing my finance. However, I learned very quickly it's easier said than done. So running a nonprofit and trying to, something here. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So getting a nonprofit up and running is not the easiest thing to do, because you have to reach out and convince people that what you're doing is a really good cause and they should get behind it. And we all want diversity. We want inclusion, don't we? And then people generally say yes, but getting them to go into their pocket and pull out money, because there are a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, there are a lot of organizations in need right now. So, dollars aren't as forthcoming as you would think they would be, but we're still working on it and we won't give up. Now, another thing that brought me to this area is also when I was working on Wall Street, I had joined a number of groups that were progressive about bringing people of color into Wall Street, into the finance area. Because as you know, we probably about 1% of that industry. It's basically a business of older white men. That's the business. And I can tell you that I went to literally hundreds of meetings where I was the only person of color in the room.
Mm.
And oftentimes I was the only woman in the room. So imagine I'm in a room full of, because we do these, what we call horse and buggy shows. But so we go into a broker's office for lunch and we talk about our products because I sold investment vehicle products. And there would be, in this big luncheon area, there would be anywhere from 25 to 50 brokers, financial advisors. And there would be me, and usually I would work with another partner who was someone who wasn't of color. And the whole room was filled with white male faces. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with this picture?
Mm.
Why aren't there more women here? Why aren't there more people of color here? And I would literally get excited if I saw someone who was Hispanic, someone who had a little color to the skin. Yeah, someone who was Asian. You know, I would be like, oh, you know, someone I could relate. Not to say that I couldn't relate to others, but there was a feeling of comfortability that it lends when you can see someone that looks like you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our programs that we've launched at the beginning of this year is our Black Wealth Success Programs. And that program is basically providing role models to future entrepreneurs. So we are interviewing very wealthy and successful individuals, and they're telling their stories. We're documenting it, and we're building a library of these stories so that future entrepreneurs, people who want to do this, can look and say, there's somebody who looks like me. There are studies and research that shows that when someone has someone that looks like them that they can look up to, that they can emulate, and they can use as a role model, that it actually helps them to succeed. And I can say that along the way, I was very lucky. I did have role models. They didn't look like me, but I was lucky enough to have people in my life who supported me and wanted me to maybe break some barriers, break some ground, and be in the room. And that's why I was able to do that. But we need to have more of that. And so that's what Culture Shifting Foundation is doing. And so when I heard about this opportunity, it really excited me because of my background in finance and on Wall Street, and knowing the lack of diversity that is still Wall Street. I felt that if I could spearhead an organization and create a change and not run away because things get a little difficult or people say no a couple times, then I could make a difference. So that's how I ended up doing this. And
yeah. And what would you say has been the response from the people on the other side that you're pitching this idea to, or you're in those meetings with? Has it been a positive response or difficult or mixed?
No, I should say yes, but it's been very positive. That has been positive. I found that in all the meetings and my discussions, people say, oh, that's great. I'm so glad you're doing this. We'd love to support. Right now, we're not supporting this. We're supporting something else. Or they'll say, get back to me at the end of the year, which is positive because a lot of people do give at the end of the year. You know, we'll be going into Giving Tuesday, which will be around Thanksgiving. And that's going to be our big push to try to raise funds. And we'll reach out to people, and I'll reach out to those people who did promise. And I know it's a relationship game. It really is. Because working in finance, when we went out to get clients, to get accounts, it was about building a relationship. And a lot of times it did take some time. Yeah. And those relationships are generally the ones that last the longest. So if you get somebody over time, generally that person will stay because they've done the homework, they've done the research, they've looked into you, and it's where they want to be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the impediments that stops Black people from around the world from going into finance?
Well, it's like anything else. And I'm going to read you something that I thought this kind of wraps it up and where we are. You know, primarily, and I can't speak for the UK, you probably have a little more diversity. I'm not sure, but I can speak for the United States. And the United States of America was built on racism. It was built on a foundation of slave labor. And so when slavery was abolished, there were policies and laws put in place to keep people of color subjugated. So those policies and those procedures and those laws have not completely gone away. And even though some of these things are illegal to do, they're still being done. And there's still a mindset that Black people are not necessarily up to par in this area. Maybe we can play football. Maybe we can play basketball. But when it comes to managing money, no, maybe not so much. There was actually a time when we were thought as subhuman. Okay? There are still those who believe that to this day, as shocking as it may seem. So it's a lot of work that has to occur to change that thinking. And yes, there are many people who are supportive and who think that kind of thinking is nonsensical. But there are still people who do believe that a person of color isn't quite up to par, isn't as intelligent as someone who is white, unfortunately. So, according to McKinsey and Company, a lack of financial inclusion for Black Americans exists at every level of the financial system. Understanding the sources of exclusion is the first step in fixing the system. As of 2016, the average Black American family had a total wealth of approximately 1/10 the wealth of the average white American family. This gap leaves many Black families at a significant economic disadvantage, with less financial security and less ability to fully participate in the economy. Less wealth also means Black Americans are underrepresented in the market for financial products and services. Improving financial inclusion is not only our collective societal obligation to support American families that have too often been historically marginalized, but also a critical step in supporting the future economic livelihoods of Black families. Moreover, increased inclusion of Black Americans in the financial system would benefit the entire economy. Black families would have greater opportunities to reinvest and grow their wealth and subsequently support increased economic activity. The inclusion of Black families in the financial system would also create new opportunities for financial service companies. Our research shows that financial institutions could realize approximately $2 billion in incremental additional annual revenue if Black Americans had the same access to financial products as white Americans. If Black Americans reached full parity in terms of wealth with white Americans, financial services companies could realize up to $60 billion in additional revenue from Black customers each year, McKinsey and Company. Now, the fact that we are not in these rooms is systemic racism. It really is. The door has been closed. So we're working to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the exclusion of Black Americans in the financial industry also limits narrows the cultural land to a very small thing. It's where it's not as expansive as it could be, and we're not having these other perspectives in the products and things.
You hit the nail on the head. When we exclude a group of individuals solely based on skin color, we often exclude some of the best and the brightest. I mean, I think we've all grown up with individuals who have, and I know I did because I grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which was before it was gentrified, which was not the easiest place to grow up. But I grew up with some kids that were top in the class, that were brilliant, who created things, got all kinds of awards. And somewhere along the line, they lost. They lost out to societal norms, to their circumstance, to whatever was going on in their environment. And some of them died of drug abuse before they were 21. Some died of disease, of guns, violence in the neighborhood. Friends of mine that I grew up with, I remember calling them the cool girls, the hip girls, the pretty ones. Many of them ended up having 5 kids before 25, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, that limits you. That limits your possibilities. And, so there were things put in place. When you have groups of people put in a housing project, and many of these individuals in this housing project never actually go beyond the housing project. They stay there. They raise their children there. Their children raise their children there. The furthest that they go when they're traveling is maybe down south, maybe to the beach. But as you and I know, travel is a form of education. When you travel, you get to see different parts of the world. You get to see how different people live. And those things inspire and motivate you to do different things. When you can see it, you can be it. Yeah. So that's where we are.
I think so, because I remember going to Brazil. It was my first trip alone, many, many years ago now. And it just opened my eyes. I had been born in London, grew up in London, seen London. I've been to Europe, France, some, but I went to Brazil and it was totally different. And I came back a different person. I experienced different things, different languages, different ways of being. And just a little thing that I noticed, because in London, when you're on the tube or the bus and someone sits next to you, you don't talk. It's just, it doesn't happen. But I found that in Brazil, when I was in Rio, somebody will sit next to you and they will start communicating. And at first I thought, oh, wow, what's going on? That's really weird. And I realized it wasn't them that was weird. It was me that was in this bubble of just not being used to it.
Exactly. That's like New York. If you're on the train and someone smiles at you, you're like, oh no, what does he want? Like, what's he going to do to me, And it's so interesting. I went to school upstate New York, right near the Canadian border. And St. Lawrence is right at the St. Lawrence River. And it's a different way of living up there. And so I got used to seeing people and saying, hey, hi, how are you? So I came back to New York and I rode the subway and I'm like, I met someone's eye and I was like, hi, and they were like,
Yeah.
what? So it's a different way. And yes, Ron, we're the weird ones because humans are communal people. We are meant to be with other individuals, to say hello, to meet and congregate. And we've been taught, because I think when you live in a city, there's a safety in you. We feel it's a safety in not talking to your neighbor. You can live literally next door to someone and never see them and never speak to them anyway.
What is your view on reparations?
My view on reparations, I actually agree with it. I think that people who are born here inevitably will experience some sort of racism. Even if you are the wealthiest Black person, you are not treated the same as someone of middle income who is white here in America. And in order to change that, I think something has to be done. And I think reparations is a start. I think reparations, I agree with it. So, will we ever see it? I don't know. I know there's a push for it, and it's a very interesting thing because my dad is from Barbados, the island of Barbados, and my mom is from the South here. And some people argue that people whose family are from the Caribbean or other places, or maybe the UK, or they shouldn't necessarily participate. But I think that if you've been living here, or if you've been born here, and you've been here for a significant amount of time, really, you have been affected by the systemic racism that is here. So,
I guess
agree with that.
Even if they were coming for Barbados, they were taken to Barbados anyway. Just
Absolutely.
Like my parents came from the Caribbean, but they didn't voluntarily go there. They were taken there, and now
Absolutely.
we're in London. So whatever they come from, it's still the same source, isn't it?
It is, but the argument is America isn't responsible for Barbados. That was a British sovereign, island. So we should only take care of here. I think that if you're here in America and you are a citizen, you're due reparations. I mean, when you think about all of the different experiences we as Black Americans have, I mean, you can't even compare it to the experience of someone who is white here. When I think about the number of times that my brothers were stopped with their friends, thrown on the ground in the rain after going to a club because they were pulled over by the police while driving Black. Those are traumatizing. Those experiences traumatize you and they wreak havoc on the psyche. I know an individual, and I won't mention his name because he's pretty well known, but he was driving his car, which happened to be a Bentley convertible in the city. He was pulled over and they found a gun in his car. It wasn't licensed, but the business he's in, he uses that. He's in like the rap business and all of that. So anyway, he shouldn't have been carrying it because it wasn't registered, but it was an excuse to lock him up. And I can tell you, he's totally traumatized from the whole experience. And we had all gone out to eat. And as soon as he saw police officers, his whole body language changed. These things are life-changing. And there should be some reparation for that.
Yeah. And And this trauma runs through generation, so it's generational. So your kids, it's passed
It's
on
in
to
the
your
DNA.
kids, and it's in the
Absolutely.
DNA.
It's in the DNA. We have trauma from our ancestors.
Yeah.
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 Can you imagine being snatched from your home, taken across the seas, where many were being thrown overboard because they were sick?
Mm.
And you watch this, or because there wasn't enough food to feed them. So imagine that. And then you survive and you get to a new country where you know no one.
Yeah.
And then you're shackled again and put on a block, bid on, sold. And then maybe you find a little love with someone and you have a child and it's taken from you and sold. Maybe the person you fell in love with or married was killed, beaten to death. These are all traumas that run in our blood.
Mm. And so, I mean, most people have these traumas and they don't recognize where it's coming from. And you come up in a society that you're just seeing one type of person, all, in the commercials, one type of person, European person, and you're getting this message that you're not good enough. And you have these reactions, because when you have traumas, just like a big, large part of the Native American community, one way that they dealt with the trauma, unfortunately, is some reservations is drugs and alcohol and these things, because you don't know that you have the trauma and maybe don't have access or ways to work on it. And then you're at the same time, you're getting this message that you're not good enough. And you're just thinking, well, I just need to be a better person, but not recognizing the deep wound that is there, that's generational, like and I have personal experience with that, because my my trauma, I used to, when I first saw the trauma and I saw that it was passed down also from my dad, who's been in traumatic experiences growing up, very traumatic experience. And I thought, wow, I'm getting it from him. So that was one step. But then I tracked back. We did research to track my family hired professional person to research our ancestry. And turns out great, not sure how many greats grandmothers and we got the documents, was a slave and was hung. So she was put on trial and hung. I didn't think that trauma could be passed down, to generations. But now I'm seeing that, of course, and from your work with energy and everything else, that energy, moves through. It's in the it moves through the ancestry and from generation to generation. So,
well, they're doing research now, and it shows that trauma actually can change our DNA and change our gene makeup.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine, as your genes are changed, we share those. So you inherit the genes from your ancestors. So that's putting it very simply. And there's, a lot of scientific research behind it. But energy, and even when I talk to people about relationships, and when we have sex with someone, research is showing that a woman can actually retain the DNA of every sexual partner she's had.
Mm-hmm.
That should make you crazy. So, think about it. You're sharing all these different energies and different genes of others. So, yes, when our blood changes, our DNA changes, we inherit these things from those that came before us.
Yeah, and it's not even, just a something that has happened to people of color, but also our European brothers and sisters. And I mean, the biggest one is, the Jewish people going through the Holocaust, and that being passed down, through the generations has had a big effect on health and other things in that community, and something that it seems like they seem to found a way to do a good job of working together in that way. And what would you say about folks in the Black community? Do you think we're getting better with working together in this way? And
well, I think there has been, we have recognized that there is a need for us to come together. So the Black Lives Matter movement showed that, I think. But speaking about the Jews and what their trauma and what they've gone through, my daughter is a licensed therapist, and she has her own business with a group of women. And she is quickly becoming a therapist. She does DBT DBT therapy, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. So it's a specific type of therapy. And she works with a lot of adolescents, and she works with adults. A lot of Hasidic Jewish people are coming to her, because what happens is one person tells another and another and another, and they're coming to her for help. Yeah. So she's getting a very large client base of Hasidic Jewish people. And you're right, they come together to get the help that they need. So for their children and for themselves. And I think we as a people can learn from that, because there is still sort of a stigma among the Black community about therapy. Yeah. Especially the Caribbean and places like, I don't need that. You just need to work harder. You just need to, we don't have time. Growing up, I remember that nobody has time for that. You've got to do this, just stop thinking about it. That kind of thing, No, we need to address the wounds for them to heal. They have to be addressed. And I think that there is a better understanding now that we need to come together as a group, as a people, to be more supportive of each other. And when we saw, it was trauma to actually see a man, George Floyd, to see a man's life actually taken in front of our eyes, to see the life snuffed out of him. I mean, it was traumatic for most people, but imagine being a Black man and seeing that. So I think that people now are realizing and understanding that we do need to come together and work together and help build. So we're seeing more projects around coming together and working together. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is for, it's not just for the people of colors that why this is important. I think it's for the good of humanity. And quite frankly, I think it's for our own survival as a species. We need to recognize the traumas that were created, and be responsible and accountable for them, that America has produced, not just here but around the world.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah, and to nature, how we're destroying our earth, our home, and all these different ways. So yeah, it's something that I think is important for our survival as a species. I mean, I don't think the solution to what we're going through is let's just go conquer another planet, go to Mars, pack up and go to Mars and ship people and products over there. It's so ironic when you think of it, that we already tried that. It didn't work. It got us, where we are right now.
I imagine that there are colonies of people throughout the galaxy looking at us and saying, do not come this way. Do not bring that here.
We're not going to fall for it.
Totally, I think it's totally crazy for us to think that we are the only human species or whatever in the galaxy. I'm sure there are other life forms, and I'm sure they're looking at us like, what in the world are you doing? And don't bring it here. So, yeah. Yeah.
And because of the way we've lived, the amount of extraordinary talent, inspirational people to invent, create, and even through all of these experiences, Black people have created so much. Imagine if that was fulfilled and unleashed, what could be created? It could be a completely different way of being and looking and seeing, which will transform everybody.
That is what we hope for the future. And doing this work, that's what we want for the future, so that everybody, no matter what your skin color is, has an opportunity to invest, to create wealth, to grow economically, to have quality health care, to live the American dream. Because of the color of your skin should not be a reason you are denied success. So imagine if we weren't held back, if we weren't denied. Imagine what could have been accomplished. And a lot of, they're showing now too, with research, of course, that a lot of the inventions that were accredited to white people were actually created by Black people. But remember, at that time, Black people couldn't own anything. Like, we were owned, right? So anything that we created was the property of the slave master. So he took credit for what was created, So like the cotton gin and those sorts of things. Brilliant inventions that changed history were created by people of color. And it's only recently that we're starting to get credit for these things. Yeah.
Also, I think as well, so much of what we are taught in history has been a viewpoint of the oppressor. So we just don't know. Recently, I think I spoke to Ade about it, the history of Wall Street and where it came from, where they used to buy and sell slaves.
Yeah.
And so if we don't know this, and if it's not known, if you don't know where you're coming from, it's very difficult to see where you are. And when you see it from that point, you look at, you see reparations as not just a one-off thing, it's to repair, right, which is not one payment or something. It is a lifelong, ongoing, multi-generational way of being.
Absolutely.
Looking at all forms of health and care and culture and ways of being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you think about Black Wall Street, right, that was destroyed, literal bombs were dropped on people and businesses. Now, imagine what could have become of that if that hadn't happened. There should be reparations for that. Imagine. So there were many such cases where Black people worked hard and started to succeed, to flourish, to thrive. And others looked at that and said, no, not here, not in our America. And they destroyed it. There should be reparations for that.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. So why don't y'all pull yourselves up from your bootstraps? Always going into the past and
Oh, wouldn't we love to do that? And I think that that's such an interesting way to phrase it. When so many times we have pulled ourselves up from our bootstraps only to have it snatched from us. So, yes. But I'd also say that there are still policies in place that prevent us from doing so. Mm-hmm. So, at least fairly. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have the opportunity and the access. And that's what we're working to do, to create opportunity and access for people of color that normally is not readily available.
Mm.
So, yes, we'd love to pull ourselves up by our bootstrap, given the opportunity and the access to the same investment opportunities that white people have. We'd love to have those opportunities. And so we're beginning to create those opportunities.
Yeah. So it's we have about 5 more minutes left. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, I'd like to say that if you believe in diversity, inclusion, equal opportunity, opportunity for all people, which is the American dream, not just one group of people, then I would say support what we're doing. Visit our website, cultureshifting.foundation. Make a tax-deductible donation today on our website, or just figure out, work with us and support us, put our name out there, share, join the conversation. There's many ways that you can support what we're doing. So, yeah, I would just say that, I'd like to end with that, saying that go on our website, check out what we're doing. We've got a number of programs that we're working on right now to create substantial change. And we can't do it alone. We need help. So we ask you to join us.
Great. And I'll put the link in this video, well, on whatever page, on the YouTube page, the Facebook page, because it's going to go to YouTube as well.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Just to get the millions of viewers that we get.
I would love that. All of you come from far and wide, all of the millions. But thank you. I appreciate it. And, you never know. You never know who's going to hear the message. And so we just keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cecelia, I've got one last question.
Yes.
We have, this wealth has been attained in our imaginations. What does the world look like to you?
With all of this wealth, it looks like
health and wealth.
It looks like people recognizing their dreams, fulfilling their dreams, doing the work that they want to do, and not being denied access to that because of their skin color. So if you see the way things look now, right? Just imagine all of the people that are out there today that want to do something different but cannot do it, or feel that they can't do it because they're in a certain environment, a certain circumstance. Imagine those people being able to fulfill their dream and are not denied because of the color of their skin. We're not asking for a leg up. We're not asking to do better. We want to be given at least a fair shot, an equal playing field. We're not saying we want to take from this person and take from that person. And no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we deserve an opportunity, a fair opportunity, which is our God-given right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cecelia, it's been a pleasure. And I think we'd love to have you back, because there's so many subjects that I would love to talk to you about, the acting, the healing, the philanthropy and wealth, that we can all blend together. And I think it would be a wonderful conversation to have you on again.
Well, I would love to. I would definitely love to be back. One of the things also that attracted me to this is, in the work that we're doing, we're focusing on entrepreneurship, venture capital, and also health equity, because I think all of us know that as a result of the pandemic, that there is no health equality here in the United States. And the poor people and people of color did suffer more. And there is a marked difference between what the health services that one group of people get and another get. So that kind of goes into what I do, as well as the health and healing and the working and creating change. So yes, I would love to come back and speak more with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I had my coffee with me. I didn't bring a cup of coffee, but next time I will. And thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Yeah.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
We'll be in touch. We're gonna upload this onto YouTube, and I'll send you a copy, and it's on Facebook as well on our page. So,
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.